I have several videos so far on dealing with Skytoss, and a lot of them involve hitting a timing with queens and hydras. One of them is about using Swarmhost and Nidus to harass the opponent, but this one is inspired by something I saw Snute do on his stream. Instead of saying, oh goodness, the opponent is going for Skytoss, I need to end the game as quickly as possible, what if you just made, as he put it, a little bit of everything? Where you have some queens, you have some hydras, you have some ultras, you have some infestors, you have spire tech, and you can make corruptors if you need to. You have some spores, and you kind of just take a bunch of bases, creep a bunch of the map, and instead of saying, oh, I need to prevent the Protoss from going Skytoss, you just let him go Skytoss. And then you make even more well-rounded units than the Protoss can. So the opening situation, I would say, is worth addressing in this one. It's a gate cyber opening. The opponent goes for a stalker first to deny information. So this stalker is immediately sent over here, which I would say is unusual, but possible. It's fairly normal for Zerg to have overlords on the map and to want to scout things, so if you want to scout the Protoss main, then sending an overlord in that path, it's vulnerable here, so it's fair for Protoss to send a stalker out. And then another stalker mothership combo over here, shooting another overlord. So I make a bunch of overlords in response, so I'm not supply blocked. And this kind of tips me off and says that rather than commit to, say, 2 adepts early, or even 1 adept shaded across the map, the Protoss is working incredibly hard to prevent me from seeing what they're doing. Why would you do this? Why would you try and hide some information? Usually that's when you're playing very far from standard. You have something that's kind of sneaky and maybe exploitable, like double Stargate, Mass Oracle hidden until you have a whole bunch of them, rather than, say, just a handful of adepts shading around, taking a third, a normal ground Protoss kind of macro progression. This is more of a surprise factor opening, where if they can pool up a bunch of oracles and you don't have enough defense, they can deal a lot of damage. So I think I saw the opponent taking the third. I saw the probe go out there. So I'm not really worried about being cheesed. One of the macro checkpoints in Zerg versus Protoss is putting 1 spore in each worker line and putting 3 roaches to hug each spore. It keeps you safe against DT Prism, Adept Shades, a bunch of different stuff. So I go ahead with that procedure. I also have queens in my base. And I don't have an Overlord close for an Overseer Scout or anything, but I did take Overlord speed and I'm sending 1 into the main immediately. So I send it in, Stalker shooting again, and I see the Stargates. And since I've scouted it this late, I'm pretty much screwed against something like this. Ideally, what you do, as soon as you find out it's Mass Oracle, is you put, instead of 1 spore in each worker line, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, just to increase the effective DPS and to secure your bases. Oracles are pretty bad at killing hatcheries, but they're really good at killing drones, and if they have a big number like this, like 6, they can very easily beat a couple queens and some spores. So in response to this, I'm using my roaches to break these rocks for a timing attack later on, potentially, taking a different 3rd base, and my 4th base is on the way. So 3 spores, and then now I say, alright, I know it's Skytoss. You don't just pool up 6 oracles and then not use your Stargates. That would be a little bit silly. So they're continuing to invest in the Protoss Air plan. I have nice Overlord spread. One of the benefits of facing Oracle as opposed to Phoenix is they don't have a squad that can deny you Overlord vision early on, so just spread out the Overlords, be able to see where the Oracles are moving around. You can always move them if you need to later on. So here I'm saying, alright, I took some damage at the 3rd base, so I don't feel like I'm far enough ahead to just hit the Protoss with a timing and end the game. So instead, I'm going to focus on Carapace upgrades. I already have +1 ranged. So Carapace. Carapace is more effective against Skytoss than the attack upgrade because of how fast Interceptors attack. So I'll take +1 armor, +2 armor, +3 armor. Infestation Pit, Spire. I have Hydra range done already. And just grabbing, instead of a ton of units for a big timing, A little bit of everything in the macro department. You could even say that I made these hydras a little bit earlier than I needed to, perhaps, but it is nice to have map control for a while. So we've seen the workers, or units tab. I have 76 workers to 68. The queens are just spreading lots and lots of creep. These overlords are giving me vision of bases. The roaches are pretty close to useless in the main Skytoss fight, so I want to find a effective way to get rid of them for my 200 supply max out. So I was going to send them over here to deal with this expansion, but I believe in a little bit here I see a couple adepts shade across. Yeah, so this overlord spots these two adepts. So rather than focus hard on denying this base, I'm just going to protect mine. So putting a couple roaches in each of my expansions from this group. And there's the amazing Golden Armada. Some people would say if the Protoss gets more than 6 carriers, you lose, but that's not entirely true. Carriers are really bad against Ultralisks because air units, whatever units, will target attacking units in general, and they deal very, very little damage to Ultras, so they lose a lot of their effective DPS potential when they have those really strong Zerg meat shields in the front, and then a bunch of Hydras and Queens to provide DPS and healing behind. In addition, we'll look at the Structures tab. I have 23 Spores this game. So one of the advantages that a player can create is, in addition to your main army, you can add Static Defense to add to the effective damage output and health of your fighting force on top of the usual 200 supply. So I'm really just trying to give Protoss a bad time expanding. They have their 4 bases. I don't want to fight into cannons and a mothership and all these stasis traps. So I'm just going to really work hard to prevent the next expansion. So here we'll look at my composition for this fight. My positioning isn't amazing here, but instead of just a 2-2 Queen Hydra timing or trying to kill Protoss with a Hydra Ling timing, I have 71 drones, which allows me to remax, 36 Hydras, which, let's look at their upgrades, +1 attack, +2 armor, 3 Overseers to give detection against the cloak from the mothership, 3 Roaches that I did a Roach drop and I'm kind of doing a little bit of burrow harassment, 3 Ultras, just enough to add some like tankiness to the army, but not enough that melee units become a main idea, 6 Infestors with Burrow and Neural Parasite to be able to try and neural the mothership. This is just really annoying for Protoss because this unit is incredibly expensive and strong, so if you just keep grabbing it from them, then your units are cloaked some of the time, and they lose a lot of effective DPS in their army composition. So let's think about, I win this game with this fight, but what if we didn't? What if this wasn't a game-winning engagement? This Protoss player only has 7 Void Rays to 10 carriers. If they ever neglect Void Rays and Storm, and they overcommit to carrier, then a Corruptor Remax is going to be really strong. So I have 2 Spires here. One of them has +2 Carapace on the way and then attack. I should probably have started attack here, but as soon as those finish, you can take more upgrades and then do a Corruptor Remax. If the opponent goes into Storm, Ultralisks are a counter. So we'll say unit by unit, Ultras counter carriers, High Templar, and do decently well against cannons and Archons and ground units. Hydras are good at mowing down interceptors and just providing a lot of DPS, as long as you have a tank for them. You need something as a buffer. They're weak to Storm. They're good against Void Rays, but they kind of taper off against carriers in the late game. And then Queens are just versatile support units in general. They're tanky, they can heal stuff, they can shoot ground and air. And the Infestor is kind of the icing on the cake of being able to neural some stuff. Some people were asking Snute in his stream when he was talking about this sort of strategy and saying, well, is fungling the interceptors worth it? The interceptors move around so fast that it's pretty unreliable landing the fungals, was kind of his answer to that. Neural Parasite is a targeted spell, so being able to land that is more reliable than trying to go for some fungals. So with this big worker economy, if I were to lose a lot of stuff, which I ended up not because I kept grabbing the mothership, and then I killed it before they could recall out, I would make a bunch of Corruptors, and I have a big enough bank here to remax. And on a fundamental level, the main advantage of Zerg over Protoss is not that they have stronger units, it's that they can remax faster. Their production is better. So when a main fight happens, if both players are making units, Zerg is going to hit 200 supply again faster than the Protoss. So let's see, production. I'm making 9 Corruptors, 8 Hydras, plus 3 armor on ground, plus 2 armor in the air, and taking another base. If I needed to siege this base when it was already established, there was a nexus, there were some cannons, there was some storm, you can put a spore wall kind of outside their expansion and try and bait the fight into the spore wall. Whoever gets the static defense as part of their fight is going to be a bit stronger, so you can't really move the spores into their base, but you can bait them into your spores outside of their base. Thanks, Snute.